Welcome everybody. My name is Anthony Brinklow, the Foundation's Grants Coordinator. Thank you for joining us for our 6th community conversation for UN SDG 8, which I'm staff champion for. And I would just like to tell you a little bit about the goal that I'm proud to champion. To promote a sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth with decent work for all is the 8th goal of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Roughly half of the world's population still lives on the equivalent of about $2 a day. And in too many places, including the UK, having a job doesn't guarantee the ability to escape from poverty. I chose this goal to champion on behalf of the Community Foundation, as it promises to allow those in difficult circumstances and with challenging starts in life to improve their life conditions. In 13 years with the Foundation, I've been enabled to develop from part-time admin support to my current role as Grants Coordinator. One project funded by the Foundation that meets SDG 8 is My Great First Job CIC. This project worked with young people who've taken different routes into the world of work, such as degree apprenticeships, to create videos to motivate and inspire the next generation of young people. The Community Foundation will soon further work to support this SDG through the launch of our Enterprise Fund, which will support social enterprise startups which are less than a year old. I'm pleased to introduce the panel members who are taking part in today's community conversation. Deborah Charles from Novacroft, an NCF trustee, Thomas Cliff from Cafe Track, and Joe Flavin from Core at Corby Cube. I'm happy to pass over to our Deputy CEO, Rachel Mcgrath, who will facilitate a discussion on this SDG.
Thank you so much, Anthony, our Global Goal Ambassador for UN SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. I'm sure you'll have been as equally shocked as I was to hear that still half the world is relying on only $2 to live on. And thank you also for highlighting some of the great work that we've been able to fund to help work towards that goal, and also to highlight the launch of our new social enterprise fund later this year, which will help contribute to the goal too. I'm so delighted that our panel can join us today. Welcome, Deborah, Tom and Joe. We really look forward to being able to discuss with you as experts in your fields, your ideas, thoughts, observations and opinions on how we in Northamptonshire can work towards supporting the aims of this goal for decent work and economic growth within the county. We look forward to getting an idea about your ideas about local solutions. So thank you for your time and specialism today, and we're delighted that you can join us for this conversation this afternoon. But just to get a bit of insight as to your background and also your work around this goal, just want to ask you each, what local activity or commitment are you carrying out to help support decent work and economic growth locally? And of course, this could be in your capacity as a donor, part of a giving circle, local charity, or indeed in a personal capacity. And I'll first hand over to Tom.
Hi, thank you very much. So yeah, my name's Tom Cliff. I set up Track, which is a Northamptonshire-based social enterprise, and our commitment is to support autistic adults to access employment. Nationally, there's only 16% of autistic adults in full-time employment. And whilst there's lots of debate about whether that figure's 16% or 20%, the truth is it's nowhere near 100. And actually what we found is by supporting people into employment, it gives them so many more choices. And when we talk about employment, we don't have to mean full-time work, 5 days a week. For some individuals we've supported, it's been 2 or 3 hours a week, right the way through to graduate roles. And our commitment has been there through supporting employers about what they can do. And starting off, you know, we're very proud to be from Northamptonshire. We've got the NN postcode in our registered name. And we want Northamptonshire to lead the way in creating opportunities, because there's lots of talented people who want to work and can contribute to, you know, the whole society. And by giving them these opportunities, we've supported 40 plus people now into paid employment, all of whom were unemployed before. And importantly as well, created experiences for people within local companies. And we've actually been able over the pandemic to expand that to working with some larger national companies and international companies such as Microsoft as well. So That's been fantastic. But yeah, that's our commitment. We're very passionate about supporting autistic adults to find their career pathways.
Thank you very much, Tom. That's so inspiring to know that you've helped 40 local residents gain employment, and also being a champion of neurodiversity and helping educate employers locally, nationally and internationally to make them understand how they can break down barriers to develop meaningful employment pathways for all communities and all citizens. Thank you so much for that input and introduction. Over to Joe.
Hi there, my name is Joe Flavin. I'm the director of the Core at Corby Cube Theatre in Corby. So the Core is 10 years old, well 11 years old now, if the last year counts, I'm not entirely sure. But we were set up in 2010. We're an Arts Council National Portfolio organisation. And I suppose as part of that, I suppose we operate in two ways. One, we're obviously a venue that puts on live theatre shows for the community of Corby. We put on 200 shows every year, and from those 200 shows, we get about 35 to 40,000 people through the doors of the Core. So I suppose in terms of kind of the thinking behind the Core, a lot of it was to do with how could a theatre venue in a town centre that was looking to regenerate, how could a theatre venue stimulate people to return to town centres and stimulate the nighttime economy? So I suppose in terms of supporting people in employment, since the Core has been around, obviously we've been joined by the cinema. And since that, we've had a lot of shops, cafes, restaurants, pubs opening up in the town centre that now have something that stimulates that activity in the first instance. So prior to the lockdown in 2019-2020, our last kind of full financial year, our estimated economic impact was 3.8 million for the local economy. So that's based on an estimation of the people that we employ through the arts, be that freelancers or be that artists, or indeed people who staff the shows, technicians, camera people, front house ushers and so on. As well as that, then we estimate that people coming to buy a theatre ticket, they're also using taxis, they're employing local babysitters, they're going to see a show, get a meal afterwards and get a drink afterwards. So all of that stimulating the nighttime economy. So with that in mind, I suppose we also operate then as a creative learning hub. So whilst we put on shows in the evenings, a lot of our work then is centered around working with young people in the community, working with schools, particularly to engage young people in the arts. And particularly, I suppose, a mission of ours is to engage young people who might be that little bit harder to engage, or maybe aren't, getting involved in more traditional kind of routes. So one of our most recent projects, Lyrical Lockdown, in collaboration with Made with Manny, that would have been particularly geared at kids who maybe might have gone a little bit off the rails during the lockdown, bringing them back, I suppose, into a positive environment and getting them to explore music and explore media production as a way to kind of stimulate them and get them kind of into a positive activity again. So I suppose, any kind of area where we see ourselves being able to apply our abilities to think creatively about problems and to come up with solutions, particularly around young people and enabling young people to kind of take steps towards more positive activity. That's a lot of what our creative learning program would involve.
Thank you, Joe, so much. It's just really, really insightful to understand and know the massive impact financially that the existence of the theatre has in a space and place in terms of the economy that it supports, as you say, not just the shows that you're putting on and the actors and technical staff that you're employing, but also how it attracts businesses, supports the nighttime economy, and allows for other opportunities to build around that art space and that cultural opportunity, and also to know the work that you're doing to build young people's aspirations through alternative education experiences, which will give them pathways into employment that they might not have the opportunities to explore within a school setting. Thank you so much for that insight. Over to Deborah.
Hi, thank you, Rachel. It's a real pleasure to be here, and from my perspective, everything that I do is about legacy. And my early start in life was struggling with dyslexia, and forgive me, the noise is coming on. Struggling with dyslexia, and really a belief system, an internal belief system that I wasn't really good enough. And when I lost my parents 24 years ago, it made me realise how short life is and how fragile life is. And I started Novacroft really with a mind about people first. And I'll explain that a little bit in a moment, but for me, people are everything, and everybody is unique, and there's something amazing in everyone. And at the time when I started Novacroft, we were coming to a new millennium, and customer experience and the transformation of that experience was really important. And we've been on that journey since. So we are a customer experience transformation organisation working in central, local, government, mobility, retail and the charity sector to help those organisations give a really meaningful interaction or service to their customers, to their users. And along that journey is a talent journey too. So as a futurologist, when I look to 2030 and I see, the stats coming out of about 800 million people without jobs, I see huge opportunities when you look at the future of work. There are many jobs, I think 80% of jobs that will exist then don't exist now. That means a massive change in how we work. So for me, the absolute priority in order to grow and to be able to support our team, their families, the local and global community, hence why this Sustainable Development Goal is so important, is we have to provide pathways. So we have to grow the organisation, and to do that, we need to work with organisations that care about people. We care about people, and we need a diverse group of people to work with us, to work together as a team, to be able to make a meaningful difference to our clients' customers or users, how we describe them. So for me, we absolutely have a mission to recruit and support, even before recruitment, is to support people who may feel, and I mentioned my sort of original belief system that I didn't think I was good enough. And if you have something like that and you can't overcome it, then where are you going to be? So my mission is to support charities, and both practical and financially, to engage with people that, for instance, needs, not in education, employment or training, not in employment, education or training. That's a great bit of dyslexic demo there. And to basically help them realize there's something amazing in them, and to help them find the pathway, give them a pathway which will help them navigate towards the opportunities of the fourth industrial revolution. And we've been doing that now, particularly since the lockdown, recognizing the impact of lockdown on well-being and on jobs. So that's a massive commitment for us.
Well, first of all, Deborah, I'm going to nick the term futurologist. I hope you don't mind. I think it's fantastic. Thank you so much for starting off with that personally passionate story, because I think you're so right. I think linking in Tom and Joe and yourself and the work that you're talking about is starting off with enabling people to believe in themselves first. Yeah. And to help break down those barriers or discrimination that they may have experienced, which has put them off trying to move forward and achieve dreams or be able to access the kind of job that they would like to do and access the kind of education and training that they would like. And the Novacroft sort of principle about people first, in terms of that customer experience, and being cross-sector, not just being within one sector, but working across sectors, is a way that obviously economic regeneration can help occur in an area. And in terms of what you were talking about, from local to global and the fourth industrial revolution, the idea that, jobs will be very different from what they look like today in 10 years' time, and being able to shift and acclimatise and innovate collaboratively is going to be the way forward to achieving this goal, or part of it by 2030. So fantastic. Thank you to you all for your introduction and insight. And without much further ado, we move on to the first question, which gives you a bit of an opportunity to highlight your observations, opinions and thoughts around this global goal. So the previous United Nations Director General of the International Labour Organization, Juan Xavier Altamirano, has said, decent work is at the heart of the search for dignity for the individual, stability for the family, and peace in the community. So with that statement in mind, and with further resources available, what local solutions do you think as a panel that you would like to see being funded? And are there any specific immediate needs you think is an urgent priority for this global goal? And that could be supporting young people not in education, employment and training, as Deborah was highlighting, promoting the living wage, promoting and investing in green jobs, investing in social enterprises. And I'll pitch that question first to Tom.
So yeah, I mean, thank you. So it's been great hearing from everyone, and I think there's key themes that are there. This idea of working together and supporting each other, and you know, from my introduction, you'll tell that we're incredibly passionate about supporting individuals to fulfil their potential, and that potential, and it has to be personalised. And I think one of the challenges that we face, you know, we've seen a change in working patterns. Now that will present opportunities. I met with an employer in January 2020 who told me that an individual who I'd supported him to work couldn't work from home 1 day a week because the culture was that everyone went into the office all the time and it couldn't be done for them to work at home. And then obviously fast forward 3 or 4 months, and in April 2020, we were embracing this and actually looking at it as how it can support people. And I think alongside that, whilst I'm passionate about supporting autistic adults, in another area, I think one of the key resources that we've got to look at supporting now is people's mental health as well, which sits differently to autism. And I'm always keen to stress that just from an educational point of view, because people assume the two are linked, and an autistic person can have a mental health challenge or condition the same way a neurotypical person can. But I think that support and those opportunities and working together is the way of supporting people. You know, the work that Joe will do, providing those opportunities for people to build up their confidence, to gain real life experience. School isn't for everyone. I was a teacher for over a decade, and I learned a lot about myself, about the young people that I work with. Yet we're still stuck at an age where you have to have a certain qualification to get to the next level, Yet we see young entrepreneurs coming through, which is fantastic. Your future kind of ideas there of supporting people and embracing their creativity, and actually looking at how do we link people up. So if we've got someone that's incredibly creative, let's be supporting them with the expertise we've got in the local area. Let's be, you know, if they're fantastic at digital skills but are maybe struggling with some of the financial things, let's link them up with other people in the area and let's work together as a whole. We're very proud to be a social enterprise, and I think people have opinions about the word social enterprise, they have opinions about the words charities, and often misconceptions that can only be solved by talking to people. And I think in terms of funding will always be a challenge. We support people, and we will do everything we humanly can to avoid getting an individual to pay for that support, because they shouldn't be having to pay for it. But the traditional methods that are in there don't work for everyone. You know, there's some fantastic staff at local job centres that work very well for certain individuals, but what about that individual for whom the barrier is the job centre? Where do they then go for support? Where do they turn? And I think in terms of funding will always be at the top of people's priorities, but I think Deborah made the absolute most valid point. It's about people first. It's about getting to know individuals and supporting them. And I think that's where Northampton has a huge opportunity in a very well-established community to work together, that we don't get stuck on finance and we look for solutions of working together, because there's an awful lot of good work going on. But actually by coming together, and the work that the Community Foundation does to support projects and things is brilliant. And the more we collaborate, I think we can work towards this goal, and you know, hopefully see Northampton leading the way in addressing this, that acting locally but thinking globally as a way of really kind of helping the local community to thrive.
Thank you, Tom. So I think some priorities coming out of there is about having pathways which are really tailored towards the individual's personal needs to help them fulfill their potential, and look at different working approaches. And you gave a fantastic example of working from home not being a possibility pre-pandemic. Now everybody has moved and fast forwarded into that digitally transformed world, and now it's suddenly an open possibility. But before, these preconceptions cause barriers as well, and being open to new approaches, as well as collaborating with other organisations to look at how to best support individuals. And you made a really important point about also supporting well-being in the workplace for all communities and all citizens as being a priority, because obviously when people build emotional resilience and are given that flexibility to manage any ongoing mental health issues or flare-ups, that benefits the employer as well as the employee. So there's that kind of symbiotic relationship. And your really important point about creativity and being open-minded about people's pathways to employment and fulfilling their aspirations. School isn't for everybody, so perhaps having alternative learning experiences is something to invest in. But also I liked what you said about mentoring as well, connecting young people to potential mentors, those entrepreneurs who didn't take the school route, maybe a young person meeting an entrepreneur. That one exchange can really kind of, kind of inspire somebody to realize their ambitions can be fulfilled, and they don't have to give up on themselves, and they can, if they have that self-belief, they can get there with the right inspirers, teachers and mentors in our community. So thank you for those local solutions and priorities. Over to Joe.
Yeah, I think Tom made some really fantastic points and observations there, and I'd echo all of them. I suppose how in the course context, I suppose obviously we're kind of situated in Corby, obviously kind of keeping an eye on kind of what's happening in kind of Northamptonshire and Northamptonshire kind of more widely. I suppose thinking about kind of a young person's journey into employment from a Corby context, and I suppose where I see the kind of immediate kind of need that needs to happen. I think I think that young people in our town just kind of need those more opportunities for gateways into positive activity. It doesn't always have to be a theatre or what we do. It could be, a football club. It could be media skills. It could be working with a local radio. It could be working with somebody like RS Components, who have that kind of, oversight of kind of what that local and global kind of picture will look like in those next 10 years. But I think for me, what a key thing that needs to happen is that young people who are, I suppose, have the potential to be influenced by other factors and possibly negative factors. I think we have to be aware of the challenges that face our young people in the county as well. And whilst we have the positive influence that we can give to them, there are others who would, like to put the negative in there and sway them away from what that good experience could be. So I think, in the first instance, more funding is always required to get young people, away from those negative influences and more into positive ones like we can offer in the voluntary sector. Thinking then about, I suppose, Corby is a great example of a town that's really going to feel the effect of automation in the next 10 to 20 years. I suppose generations of families have worked in steelworks and worked in manual labor jobs and worked in that industry. They're now looking at companies who are streamlining all of that, and where you used to have jobs for pickers, you now have a machine who goes and does the picking of what I think that we need to make sure that where we have the ability to upskill young people at whatever, I say young person, anywhere from 12 to 30, they need to have an understanding, I suppose, of what the job market is going to become in the next 10 years. And I suppose organizations like ours in particular have a chance to kind of join those dots. So, we did some work with Made It Money on the Grow Festival, where we got RS Components to come in and show, young people throughout the day how to code a robot. Simple things, but it's skills that they're going to need in the future, that they need young people to be learning now. Similarly, we had another conversation with a company who are kind of at the forefront of kind of AI technology. So where people are answering phones at the moment, that this company will have AI answering that phone and diverting for you. So you will be speaking to a robot. And we had this great conversation about, do you not feel like you're taking jobs away from normal people? And he said, well, no, because we're actually struggling for people who can train the robots how to speak. So actually what we need is your drama students to come and teach that robot how to be a bit more human, but we don't have that skill set yet. So there's a role for us to play, I think, specifically in kind of working with those organizations, understanding what their challenges are, and what the opportunities are, and joining the dots so that, you know, people don't feel like they're left behind when, you know, all this modern technology comes in and potentially, you know, clears their jobs for others to come from other places that have that skills and experience. I think the onus is on us to make sure that locally we have that skills and experience for what will be the future challenges of getting into the workplace in your own place. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. That really highlights one of the key slogans and sort of meaningful sort of intent behind the global goals, which is leave no one behind. And I think you've highlighted the importance of not doing that, first of all, by having alternative learning experience and job experiences for young people, but staying ahead of the curve and, as you say, bringing industries into places like Corby to give young people an idea of the kind of jobs that they could have in the future, and an idea of the pathway to gaining those skills to enable them to be able to pick up those jobs in the future as well. I like particularly what you said about preventative and intervention work with young people. Perhaps, for example, ensuring young people don't engage with the criminal justice system and follow a pathway that helps them realise their dreams and aspirations and gainful employment. But bridging the gap is, I think, a point that you're making here, is about bridging the gap between now and the future and ensuring that people are employment ready for the kinds of jobs we probably can't conceive of right now, and working with those industries and companies to see how, from a people first perspective, to see how those potential employees in the future can work alongside those industries in a gainful way. Deborah.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I might add, Rachel, you're incredibly good at summarising. I don't know how you do that so well. That's brilliant. So I think, you know, and it's part of something that'll come later, that for organisations, for the world, the economy to thrive, there has to be business transactions that take place. Money has to move to do that. And if I think of my own organisation, we have around 650 team members currently. And when we say people first, we talk about our next milestone is having 1,000 team members, and then within 3 years, 5,000 team members. So to the point where Joe's talking about other organisations using AI, we're still promoting that we want more team members. And I'll put both those into context. So the fourth industrial revolution and the use of AI and technology is, you know, robots, whatever, is all about volume and variation. So the lower the variation of activity and the higher the volume, the more likely those jobs are to disappear. The people that do those jobs have brilliant minds, and it's already been said, and we know that we can help equip those people to seize the opportunities. There are barriers to overcome, and some of those are instilled in people's minds, like, no, you don't want to study a STEM subject because none of your friends will study those. It's not a sexy subject to study, or it's something that really clever people study. Actually, everybody's clever because everybody has a unique perspective. So there's lots and lots of opportunities, and the pathway is about helping encourage people along that. When we're talking about economic growth, we need to go to our clients with a unique offering that enables the clients to be heroes, that enables them to provide a unique service to their customers, be those central government or otherwise. And that unique service is really about some kind of human connection. Because at the end of the day, if we want to survive as humans, then all technology needs to have the future of humanity at its core. So those human interactions, they might be, yes, we build technology as well, but the core of it is all about people. So when we're going there, what we need is partnerships with organisations. And one of the things that is, I think, would be amazing in Northamptonshire is partnering together and having a united voice. We've talked about working together here and the value of that. There is a huge opportunity here. Central government need to demonstrate social value. You know, the entrepreneurial state is about investing to make change, and that's what UK government are doing. So that means for organisations like Novacroft is to link with as many organisations as possible to be able to support those that are disadvantaged, for instance, and give them opportunity. And from a practical point of view, that is Novacroft team engaging with organisations in a local community, engaging with individuals to help inspire, to help build belief, and then to provide support for them to be interviewed, to give opportunities. And I'll give an example. We have recently trained, we took a group of team members on, brilliant people, lots of unique stories, and we train them to become training facilitators and to a qualification standard. These stories, talking to them, has been absolutely mesmerizing, because the confidence that they've got. We have people homeless, people in very difficult situations, totally not believing in themselves, delivering training to many, many people on a project that has had a profound impact across the UK. And they've done that, and they've been able to do it. And it's that kind of, and we want to then help those people further along the journey to keep equipping them. And if we can do that, and we could do that together, then the bigger impact we can make. And, you know, with Tom and Joe and the work that you're doing, it's fantastic, so inspiring that we can get together and have a united approach to equipping people. That means we can generate more income, generate more reduction in budget, you know, use of budgets for public sector. That goes further, the better we'll all be, really. And I have a commitment in my organisation from a financial point of view that a percentage of my EBITDA, the profit at the end of the day, goes into supporting people not in education, employment, education or training. So.
Thank you, Deborah. That's really, really insightful as a futurologist of the panel, making us aware and being aware of how we're going to locally and globally make the world economy thrive for each of us in our respective places as we move towards the fourth industrial revolution. I get the sense you're saying for people not to be afraid of AI and technology, but in fact there's an opportunity for synthesis between creativity, the humanities and technology working across those industrial sectors together to build and improve and enhance work experiences and opportunities. And I get a sense for you that a priority there is challenging these narratives that young people are told at school where you shouldn't study STEM. Yeah. And we know from our gender equality conversation that's a barrier for women and girls studying that particular subject. And this idea or this concept of what clever stands for, we all have different growth spurts in our education pathways, but also championing the idea of building social value into the business sector and making that the norm. We know that obviously from Tom and from Joe from their work in terms of that community outreach, social enterprise model, which is combining income generation with also giving back out to the community and reinforcing the idea of challenging people's limitations about themselves. I really liked your example of an alternative learning experience where you empowered those particular young people who engaged with you to become teachers and train themselves when they're probably being used to being done too. So again, reinforcing the idea of, you know, not everybody's educational pathway towards decent work and economic growth has to be how it always has been. So that's been really inspirational. Thank you. So we move on to our next question panel, which is no surprises here. The COVID-19, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we supported and funded a number of community groups and charities that provided a lifeline to many people experiencing in-work poverty. So individuals who are actually working, but still not making enough money to get by. And also those experiencing unemployment and job insecurity and job loss. So in the path to recovery from the pandemic and moving out of COVID-19, how can the charitable sector help contribute to the economic revitalisation and regeneration of Northamptonshire? Over to Tom.
So yeah, another great question. I think, I mean, we were very fortunate and thankful. We received funding to enable us to take our cafe to become a virtual cafe track over the pandemic period. And that enabled us to keep in contact with people across a variety of different sort of life experiences. Some people we were supporting with work issues, others it was grievance. There were lots of different things. But with that support, we were able to be flexible with our model. Obviously, our cafe physically had to close. We were only able to, well, we weren't even able to open at all from our personal experiences. But being able to take that online and having the funding to enable us to do that created another way of supporting people. And I think that's going to become crucial, because the point that Joe made, you know, arts, heritage, entertainment plays such a huge role across Northamptonshire, whether you look from Silverstone to theatres to sporting teams. And actually, from our point of view, our cafe, we rely on people coming into town, being in work. We then use that funding to then support people into employment. And it's recognising that impact that every decision has throughout it. And again, funding, that word keeps coming back up in terms of that and what we'd like. But actually, if we take that out of the equation, what can we do together? And I think that in terms of the sector, we've all got jobs. We've all got opportunities for people to come in and gain experience. You know, a lot of people can come to me. They might have a degree, but they've got no idea what it's like in a workplace. And to have that opportunity, we've done lots of online videos, just letting people find out, what do you do as a baker for a job, you know, and the practical things. It's a job that starts probably at 2 o'clock in the morning. These are the things that people don't ever really tell you. You know, oh, you'll make a good baker, but actually, if for that person who doesn't want to be up at 2 in the morning, and I think we've got that opportunity, and we've been very, very fortunate. We've looked at our sort of model, and we've got companies that are partners with us as friends of track. So everyone from the university to ACS to Business Data Group, Office Odyssey, that support us financially. But actually, most importantly, it's about the partnership. And I don't like the model of taking a check and taking funding and then never keeping in contact with people. Actually, the important bit you build is the network. And I think that's what we've got, which is incredibly powerful. That, you know, somebody comes into me from Corby, for example, and says, I'm really passionate about the arts. What can I do? Well, I know who to point you in the direction of. And actually, sometimes I think people look and think, we don't really want to take on volunteers or work. We don't want to be. Actually, that's exactly what people need. They need that opportunity just to come in and see it. And I use the word experience a lot. Come and have a look around. What's it like in a theatre? Because actually, people, when they see behind the scenes, it's probably very different to what we expect. I know I'd never run a cafe before, and I was stunned as to what sort of you have to do just before the doors even open. But giving people that opportunity, that's something that we can all do. And I think in terms of, you know, there's different campaigns, give an hour, give 30 minutes, but sharing your stories with people are massive. And what we found as well is for individuals that are willing to, when they've got into work, they then shared their story with others because it proves they can do that. And that's powerful, because a lot of autistic adults have had a really tough time in every aspect of their life. But when they then see somebody who's gone on to get into this job and they can do it, and the employers are willing to make changes, you know, let's be flexible ourselves. I mean, one of the people we got into work, he goes in 5 minutes early and he has his own workstation. That's the only adjustment he has. And he was runner-up in Employee of the Year last year. So I think when we take away the focus on funding, don't, you know, I lose sleep and I worry constantly about where the next bills are being paid for. But actually, I think, you know, we can petition nationally as much as we want, but what we can do locally is provide those opportunities. And I think whether it's Northampton Town Centre, you know, we work with people sort of across the region now, and we've been able to expand over lockdown, so we can now offer placements at the National Museum of Computing in Bletchley for those people that are passionate about IT and those sorts of things. But I think those are things we can do for free. We can let people have half an hour of our time, or have a look around, or speak to schools, and especially send schools in the region who don't get that engagement. And I volunteer as an enterprise advisor for a school, and that's such a rewarding role. So I think they're things that, without focusing on money, because I think we all love money and we know what we could do with it, I think if we focus on what we can do from today forward, and then have been doing anyway, it's giving people those opportunities to gain experiences across a variety of sectors.
Thank you, Tom. So I'm really getting there, the idea of let's focus on connections and relationships across sectors in order to revitalise and regenerate Northamptonshire. And thank you for giving that example of the adaptation of Cafe Track to a virtual cafe, in how you continue to support the young people and adults that you're working with. And I thought you made a really, really important point there, because it seems counterintuitive. But the first thing that was cut in terms of funding in the pandemic year was around arts, heritage and entertainment. But it's clearly been expressed here that, from a connectivity perspective of the knock-on effect of businesses, from the nighttime economy to cafes to other, educational settings, that actually that particular sector is actually quite key, particularly to Northamptonshire, is quite distinct in its art, heritage and entertainment offer. But also the important point that you've raised through your adaptation around the need to support digital transformation within the revitalisation and regeneration of Northamptonshire's economy. And then just talking about, again, the opportunity for work experience and volunteer placements, which give people an insight into the kind of jobs that they could potentially have in the future, which may inspire them, and sharing people's stories. That sense of each one teach one. Somebody has an experience and it's worked for them, and they can share that, and that has a knock-on effect. So thank you very much. Over to Joe.
Sorry, I was on mute there, keep myself quiet. Again, some really, really lovely kind of points there. Obviously, working in the arts and entertainment sector, I echo kind of what will we do locally to regeneration, rejuvenate communities. We'll do what we always did, actually, which is put on, events. It isn't necessarily just coming to a theatre show. There's a scale kind of for festivals that we've done in the past. Which kind of year on year, the Grow Festival has evolved and welcomed so many people into the county, as well as bringing them out from their homes in the town itself. Just literally prior to the pandemic, we had the Museum of the Moon installation, big giant moon in the theatre. You could almost touch it. You can almost touch the moon, and that brought 9,500 people through our doors. And then literally 2 weeks later, we had to shut for the pandemic. But I suppose there's innovation like that arts organizations, that's our job now, in terms of kind of getting communities and getting town centres revitalised. You need an experience to come into and to come for. And locally, we're quite lucky, I suppose, in the UK, in that we have an amazing arts infrastructure and an amazing arts council, in fairness, who propped up that infrastructure, and it's been amazing throughout the pandemic to keep organizations, as many as they can, afloat. I mean, there has been some who've unfortunately gone to the wall, but given the circumstances, there's a lot of organizations who will come out the other side and will be there now to get those communities back up and running. So I suppose the first point I make is absolutely, we'll do what we've always done, and it'll be that stimulus of nighttime economy, of daytime economy, of families, of Christmas, all those things that will get people to kind of just come back and enjoy their civic spaces again, spend money locally. That's kind of one of the key things that we need to do and need to innovate in. And if it's a thing that people aren't ready to come back into a small confined theatre space, of which I'm sure there's so many, there's also innovate in terms of digital technology. There's, we're currently working on a VR theatre project where we're having local playwrights and local directors write and direct local stories for a VR headset. So you can literally experience a play without meeting anybody or even touching anybody. You can put on your headset and have a story told to you. I suppose, secondly, I suppose it is that kind of cross partnership working as well. In the voluntary sector, we have an amazing wealth of knowledge. We have, you know, organizations that are ready to go to develop skills training courses. We did one ourselves, Stand Up for New Starts, which was supported by the Community Foundation. We can upskill people. We can help people with that transition away from one job and into another. I know that the hospitality sector is struggling to get people to work in that, because it's such a difficult environment. You're in work one day, you're out the next. It's a very, very hard environment to work in. So, you know, there's work to do to help people to navigate that and to upskill. Stand Up for New Starts was all about making sure that, you know, in a fun way, you had confidence going into an interview and into a different place of work. It's a really simple thing, but when you're speaking to the women who were involved in it, there was some who maybe worked for maybe 10, 12 years due to caregiving. There were some who'd just been put on furlough and weren't sure when they were going to come back. So dealing with that uncertainty, dealing with this idea that you now had to go and look for another job in a sector that you'd never worked in before, it's an incredibly experience. And I think, you know, that there's organizations in the voluntary sector who can help massively with that particularly. And I suppose just finally to kind of make the point, so we are talking about a global problem of in-work poverty. I think that as an idea is absolutely crazy. If you're, you know, giving of your time to do a job for somebody, you should be paid properly to do that job. I'm sure we're all familiar with companies who are outsourcing their driver needs for big deliveries around the world, where they're not necessarily paying people properly for the work that they're doing and putting massive pressure on other contractors to deliver that work, and to the point where some people aren't even getting toilet breaks. I won't name names of companies, I'm sure we're all familiar with who I'm talking about, but you know, I think that on a global scale, whatever we do locally, I think that there is an onus on governments globally to think about how people are paid and how they restrict and govern companies to make sure that they're paying their staff appropriately, and that there is safeguards in place to ensure that if you are giving of your time, that you're paid properly for that time.
Thank you, Joe. I think one of the things that stood out for me particularly is what you said about, in a way, through the adaptation of the pandemic, on the road to recovery and regeneration, we need to be really mindful of people's emotional and mental well-being. We've all been through a really, really challenging, and for some people, traumatic and very, very difficult year. And actually to get people in a place where we're starting to think again about revitalization and regeneration and people feeling confident in the workplace, is to be really mindful about having support services and activities out there which really build on that well-being as people are going back into their civic spaces. And you've highlighted some of, again, like Tom, how you've adapted with digital transformation for those that don't feel safe to still be able to enjoy arts and entertainment in their area online, and open air festivals where people aren't in enclosed spaces but can still make those connections. And then the importance of cross-partnership working and navigating uncertainty as people who may have come out of not working in paid employment for a long time, but maybe doing care employment, which should be paid, but that's another conversation for another day, but maybe just, you know, getting back and shifting into work patterns and spaces in an industry where that's obviously been impacted by the pandemic, such as the hospitality sector. And then, of course, outside of our responsibility, the onus of legislation for fair wages to help, you know, address and tackle global poverty or poverty wages. So thank you for that. Over to Deborah. Deborah, you're on mute. Sorry. Have to say it at least once in every conversation.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I think in terms of the sector, what can it do? I think it is about this joined up approach. And if we take education, government, private sector, third sector, arts and families, police, etc. If we take all of those and we have a joined up approach to wanting to get more people into education, into training, into employment, to feel good about themselves, then we'll have better community, if you like, both local and globally. And it will enable us to secure more income for the county, because we'll have amazing people that can make a difference to those organisations that want to. There is business to be won around the globe, of course there is. Even though there's a pandemic, there's still a lot of business. The opportunities are there. We have to be creative and adaptive to do that, and that's why we need a diverse team. And I really think that in Northamptonshire, I would love, if I were thinking sort of 3 years from now, that I've just watched news at 10 and there's a spotlight on Northamptonshire, and it's just done the last gong of the 10 o'clock news, and it's saying we're going straight across to Northamptonshire to show how that community has really worked together and what they've achieved, and showing some case studies of the amazing journey that individuals and the community has made. And that is absolutely possible if we could have a joined up voice for good.
I think our futurologist has spoken again on our panel, giving us a future vision to work towards, where Northamptonshire is put on the map because of its commitment to partnership, collaboration, relationships, networks, and a joined up approach. It's open to being adaptable, but it puts a place and an onus on people and creativity and different approaches, not old-fashioned and traditional pathways for young people or people trying to get back into gainful employment. It's been really, really inspiring getting a wide viewpoint from you all, Joe, Tom and Deborah, and we move into the more challenging question, which I will put forward to you for your bold future vision and ideas for Northamptonshire. So, Tom, what is your vision for Northamptonshire in 2030? What do you hope we can have achieved by then to ensure decent work and economic growth for all local residents on our doorstep?
I think, as Deborah said there, it's about putting Northampton in the news for the right reasons and looking at what we do. And there's already work going on. And the more that grows, the more we'll achieve. If you look at Digital Northampton, for example, the number of small businesses which they've unearthed, we've got people producing 3D animations for movies that are going out all across the world that we perhaps previously weren't aware of, because people came to University at Northampton and then the talent left. They come in and then they go. If we work together, we've actually got, motorsport, we're world leaders at. We've got such a diverse range of individuals, organisations, and I think it keeps coming back to that point of collaborating and whether it's, from a social enterprise point of view. I think sometimes people think, oh, you can't trade. No, it's exactly what we do. We create business. We want to make profit. And what we then do with it is to help more people. And I think sometimes people struggle with that conversation. When we speak to employers, when we set out as a business, I wanted Northampton to address the international problem that autistic adults aren't in employment. I want us to be the best in the world. And if you don't start off with those ambitions, then you'll question why. We wanted to make a difference to one person's life and then grow it. But actually, when we speak to employers, it's never about this being a nice thing to do. It's selling them that it's the best business choice. And you can actually look at that from skill sets to cost savings to all of these different things. But I think Northampton has an opportunity. We are the very centre of the country. We've got thriving logistics industries, but I think it's about bringing those together. Just before the pandemic struck, we had a coach load of people that were coming down to a show at the Royal and Derngate. Sorry, I can't say it properly. It's a Northamptonshire accent thing. I apologise to Royal and Derngate. It's Derngate in my head, sorry. They'd come down from Yorkshire. They came in the cafe. They enjoyed our food. They'd come through. The coach driver had told them where to come. Where should we go in town? We were able to direct them to local independence, St Giles Cheap, all of these different areas. And then they came back for lunch and then went to the theatre and then went home and shared a really positive experience of Northampton. Now, we've got that as a whole county. And yes, people will look at councils and unitaries and all of these different things. But it comes back to Deborah's original point. Northamptonshire is made up of people. Northamptonshire isn't about a council or a particular, it's about its people. And if we work together and we share those opportunities, because I think that's another thing which is incredibly important. And I think that's where kind of when you look at the social enterprise town group, you've got lots of smaller enterprises potentially bidding for pots of money, where actually if everyone joined together, you could probably get a lot more, and we could work across a wider area and support more people and actually get rid of that competitive element to make us all better. And I think that's where people sometimes are afraid of that, because it's a different way of doing things. But I'd love Northampton to be the town that does things its own way. You know, we've got an incredibly proud history, and people will have a dig at the town and what's happened here and the various different things. I'm sure you're all thinking of the same particular transport, bus station, and all of these things. But let's focus on our incredibly proud history and make it an even brighter future and it being Northampton, you know, not trying to copy Milton Keynes, not trying to be elsewhere, but be the best that we can be as a county. And I think by working together, it's something that we can achieve. And I don't think it is, I'm not particularly visionary with that, because I think it's achievable. I think it's absolutely what we can do, hopefully even before 2030. And I think, you know, the last 12, 15 months has been horrendous, if I'm being honest, on a number of different levels. And speaking very truthfully, there's times when you think, how on earth are we going to get through this? But I think what it does prove is that the resilience of local businesses, local people, we can achieve tremendous things, and hopefully we'll go on to do that.
Thank you, Tom. So that's about collaboration across all sectors to help achieve decent work and economic growth. So in 2030, we will be collaborating, we will be people-centred, we'll be digital Northampton, we'll have invested in civic pride so that people feel proud to uniquely be part of the Northamptonshire community, and we'll have broken down barriers to employment for those across our communities. I'm going to go over to Deborah, because I'm mindful that she has childcare duties at 3. So Deborah, your vision for 2030, and then we'll let you go.
Thank you very much. I'm so inspired by Tom and Joe in what you're talking about, and I'd love to talk to you more about it actually outside of this. But for me, I think that by 2030, I want Northamptonshire to be really the guiding force in helping people embrace the future of work and be ready, and that we've got more people taking those jobs than anywhere else, because we've helped inspire, we've helped engage, we've helped educate, we've helped provide opportunity to provide career pathways, and that we've done that together. And it is together. And there's an interesting thing about competitiveness. The world has changed. It was changing before the pandemic hit. And an organisation that's growing is one that's adaptive, I've said it before, and creative. And it's about people first. If you invest in your people, if you connect with them at an authentic level, not in the corporate speak, in an authentic way. After all, the name of any organisation is the name of a group of people. If you can do that, it can make a meaningful difference, and it's absolutely vital that we do it. And I think that united, we can make a massive impact here. We have everything at our fingertips. I would really like to see a map of who's doing what, and bring it together in one consolidated thing and say, okay, if this is a pie, where are we? What are we going to do about it? Because I know that there's so many organisations that are doing amazing things. I can't do everything, but I can make a meaningful impact if I knew, and I'm already trying to do those things, but I'm sure there's other ways that I could help with my team to do even more work to support Northamptonshire going towards 2030 and beyond.
So in 2030, Deborah is predicting that we'll have cleared away the difficult labyrinths that people have to navigate, and we'll have a clear pathway for truly meaningful alternative learning experiences, so that everybody, no matter what their unique intelligence or contribution is, can find a meaningful roadmap to getting gainful employment, whatever those jobs may look like in the future. Thank you, Deborah. Over to Joe.
do the old unmute thing there again. Whenever I was a kid and I was thinking about 2030, I thought that we would have the Jetsons flying cars by now. And it just doesn't look like it's going to go that way, which is very disappointing to me. But I guess it's just the way we have to live. I digress. I suppose, I think, like Tom said, there's a lot of really, really good things currently underway. And like Deborah said, it's a lot about people. I'm really encouraged, I suppose, in a Corby context about the Towns Fund that was recently achieved, which I think is fantastic. It's going to bring a learning centre into Corby Town Centre as part of the plan. Hopefully, obviously, it has to be kind of brought back to the board. And there is, kind of innovations around kind of green technology and, I suppose making sure that into 2030, we're not facing into a massive kind of climate crisis, which we kind of already are on the cusp of. So I suppose for me, in a kind of a local vision for 2030, I think it's more arts and more culture, obviously, us popping up in more places and being supported to kind of do so, taking more artistic risks and using arts to kind of talk about what's going on in day-to-day life, and kind of reflecting people's lives back to themselves in more interesting and innovative ways, definitely using digital as part of that as well. I think the kind of learning kind of pathways that kind of Deborah and both Tom speak about as well. I think absolutely, like I said before, making sure that no one is left behind, making sure that when new industry does come in, that people feel like they have an early chance to stake their claim for it and understand where their position might be. And it might be that they're not interested in working in industry. It might be the hospitality sector, or could be working in the arts, God love them. But they need that chance to see where their place is going to be. And it's up to organizations like ours to help them to navigate that bit. And then I suppose globally, we do need to think about the climate crisis. We do need to think about green energy. We do need to think about transportation. We do massively, I think, need to think about our consumerism trends, which I think have escalated in the pandemic. I think it's so easy now to just go online, touch of a button, buy some random thing that you don't necessarily need, but you think you do. And there's a beast that's helping us all to kind of consume that. I think we need to get aware of how that's going. I think we need to get aware of the culture that's creating globally of an inequality of wealth distribution. I think people who are at the head of that kind of pyramid need to pay their staff properly. I think while digital is really, really good, not everybody is connected to it, and it isn't the be all and end all. I think that bringing people back into town centres, making sure that we have communities, and like Deborah said, people talking to people, I think that's a really, really important thing that we need to keep sight of. So while we have digital advancements, we just need a digital balance as well, and not to forget to catch up with each other now and again and have a cuppa. So 2030, I'll be having cuppas.
Okay, so 2030, according to Joe, we may have flying cars, you never know, but we will have wealth equality. We will have a green economy where people consume with social responsibility, and there will be a digital balance between digital transformation and the natural world, and what that means and brings to people's connections and relationships. We will have investment in innovative art and culture so that people can access arts and culture on their doorstep, and it not be an experience they think that is not for them, and that we will have pathways to ensure people upskilled for new industries as they emerge. Thank you so much. You've been an inspiring panel who have brought forward so much food for thought. The next steps will be that we will send out some of these recordings and share via social media to share some of your inspirations and observations, and we'll encourage people to respond to those with further comments. We've also based on your feedback and specialism and expertise and insights, we will come up with a 4-point action plan for this particular goal. We will build on that, but it's a starting point, and that will work towards our local UN Charter, which we hope to launch in the autumn. Thank you so much, Tom, Joe, Deborah, and of course our UN SDG champion, Anthony. We wish you a safe and well week, and we hope to connect with you in the future.